Hey, gang, and welcome to another episode of Try Not to Curse. I am with a guest that these are the kind of guests I love to have. No offense at all, but my friend Sarah is here with us, and Sarah, you have been through some things.
Yeah.
And as my listeners know, I am curious about any and everything, especially when it comes to experiences that I have never come across or dealt with firsthand myself. So to start off, Sarah and I have known each other since school. You graduated in 2004. Did you graduate with Caitlin?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We might get into that too.
Let's do it.
But we've always kind of, circled around one another. We've been Facebook friends for decades at this point. Where has the time gone? It's crazy. But, but you, and as we've said, you are very open and honest about the experiences that you've had, the things that you have gone through, because very much like me, you understand that it's important to share and open up to your community because you could be helping someone, or at the very least, you might be able to get some very helpful advice from other people. So I don't even know where we start, quite frankly, but as recently we've been talking, like, again, we've talked with Caitlin, you have gone through quite a medical journey, I should say, a health care journey. And again, you're very open and honest about it. Your weight has fluctuated up and down based on misdiagnosis, trying different things, trying to see what's going on. At one point, you were told you had a brain tumor. So,
yes.
I don't know where you want to start with that. If you want to start from the very beginning and just kind of how things escalated and transpired, or if you want to just go right into that story, you tell me how you want to go from there with that. But I'm just fascinated to because we've heard of, we've heard of misdiagnoses before, but not something that extreme.
Yeah. It was interesting for sure. I guess, I've struggled with my weight my whole life. And probably when I want to say maybe 2015 or so, I really started getting really heavily involved in the gym, weightlifting, eating really clean, pretty much doing anything that I could think of to maintain a quote unquote average weight, even though based on my height, I was always overweight. So it didn't matter. No matter how healthy or, how my body was composed, it didn't matter based on the BMI scale, which we all know is a crock anyway.
Right.
But I was really active, always ate well, didn't smoke. Like I quit smoking when I was pregnant with my daughter, and didn't really drink. So I didn't really know what was going on, but I had a lot of pain all the time. Joint pain, hip pain. There were days I couldn't get out of bed, hurt to walk, just random weird things that were very unusual for somebody who was textbook healthy in their 20s, like no rhyme or reason for it. I was living in an apartment for a little while that I'm fairly certain exposed me to mold. So once we moved out of there, I started to feel a little bit better. Luckily, my family didn't experience anything, but I think I'm just very sensitive to it.
Sure.
But as time kind of went on, I still had a lot of the same issues. I had blood work done. They said I had some sort of autoimmune issue, but they couldn't figure out what it was. Went to a rheumatologist. They couldn't figure out what it was. I didn't have lupus and I didn't have anything, glaring. So they were basically like, okay, just lose weight. You'll be fine.
Of course.
as is most of my life advice, just lose weight and you'll be fine.
Yep.
And I found that it was making me sicker. I was getting more strict with what I was eating. I was moving more and I was getting sicker. Like every time I could barely walk. There were times where I would try to get out of bed and my back would completely give out.
Wow.
And there was nothing wrong with my back. It was just all muscular and we really couldn't figure out what was going on. So eventually I started getting massage therapy, which I'm convinced he's a magician. He's completely saved my muscles. I've been seeing him for over 5 years and he's incredible. But since I started doing that and kind of approaching things from a more holistic perspective, I've started to physically feel better, but I still had a lot of the underlying issues. So post COVID, like during COVID, I got laid off. I was super active. We went hiking all the time. We pretty much were eating like a whole food plant-based diet because you couldn't get anything else. There was no meat, there was nothing.
Sure,
so it was, we were eating very, very clean and whatever, and we were super active, and I was still kind of feeling a little icky. But I kind of just dealt with it. And that was kind of my thing. I just, you just deal with it after you go to 10 doctors. And it got to a point where I was in like a financial crisis at one point because I was hospitalized and my insurance didn't cover everything. And I was only there for less than a day. And it was tens of thousands of dollars for them to tell me nothing.
Yeah.
They told me nothing. So fast forward to 2021, kind of current pandemic. I get attacked at work by one of my colleagues, and which is a blessing in disguise. But at the time, I took the time off to kind of deal with the issue.
Sure.
Needed to and I had time off for the first time ever since COVID. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go to the doctor. My ears really been bothering me. I've been getting really bad headaches. Maybe we can figure out what's going on. Told them about, I've been in pain for like 10 years, but I won't take anything for it. I don't want medicine. I just want them to figure out why it hurts. Like, why do I hurt? Why is it difficult for me to walk?
Yeah.
So we go through a range of testing. My hearing's a little off. They noticed that my hearing test was not normal. So they did a CAT scan and an MRI. And I get the report back, and the doctor's like, okay, this is beyond my scope. You need to go to a neurologist because you have some sort of tumor. And I'm like, come again?
Yeah.
What tumor for what? That's not why I came. Like, my ears just feel weird.
Yeah.
So I lived in fear for probably 4 months. In that time, I had written a journal entry for this website called The Mighty, which Caitlin Kelly also used to, contribute to a lot. And somehow they picked it up and they published it. And it went to like people. And I had no idea that this happened. So I'm getting all of these text messages like, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? I'm like, what is happening? I don't know what's happening. In the meantime, I'm just kind of waiting. I'm kind of waiting in the wings. Like, I'm not really sure what's happening. Go to get my hair done. My hairdresser somehow melts my hair off.
Oh.
So then I have to shave my head.
Oh my gosh.
So now everybody's thinking, oh my gosh, she has cancer.
Right. Jeez.
And I'm getting these messages like, you're so strong. Everything's going to be fine. I'm like, did I miss something? Didn't realize like this whole it just had exploded. And I didn't really know. I get to the neurology appointment. They do a really deep dive of my MRI. They're like, okay, you've got a lesion or you've got a scar tissue or something. We're not sure. It's not a tumor. Don't be worried. Like, it's not cancer. It's not anything serious, but that's not what's causing your hearing difficulties. I have some sort of venous insufficiency within my body. It's completely genetic. I got it from my mom's side, where I have something called vascular loops in my brain that pushes pressure onto my eardrums. So it creates my imbalance. It creates my headaches. It creates a lot of my hearing issues. So I have tinnitus a lot. But it explained 90% of my issues, which you can't fix it. You just kind of deal with it. I hadn't noticed it before because I was eating so healthy. I wasn't putting salt in anything. I wasn't doing anything that would trigger those episodes until I started getting really deep into the gym, and I was having these supplements and drinking these like protein shakes that had more sodium and things like that. It started to trigger my headaches and stuff. So that answered those questions, but we still couldn't figure out why my muscles were doing what they were doing. So I started to see a holistic doctor in town. We did like a full blood panel. We kind of figured out everything. But in that time is when my mom passed away. So this was only a couple of years ago. So I've been going through this at this point for almost 10 years. And then once I started to process everything with my parents and my mom, I started to feel better. We did a repeat blood work. I went back to the doctor. She's like, you don't have any of your markers anymore.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, what do you mean I don't have any markers? Like, she's like, something like you healed something. And so we started talking about it, and I started deep diving into it. And apparently there's this phenomenon, especially with women in trauma, that your body, I don't know if you've ever heard the book, Your Body Keeps Score.
Oh, yes. Yep. Jessica has talked about that on the show. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I never knew that all of my issues, because it wasn't showing up on any tests, because it wasn't a sickness, it was trauma. So I've been dealing with, going into really deep therapy and doing this whole big healing journey for the last couple of years. I feel fantastic. I have gained probably almost 100 pounds in the last couple of years because of different medications and whatever, but this is the best I've ever felt in my life. And I'll be 40 this year, and nothing hurts, nothing.
Wow.
I feel great.
Yeah. Well, and you didn't have like what they would search for as far as like PTSD kind of trauma signs.
Yep.
And so who would think that, not to say it's all in your head, but who would think that would be the root cause? And of course, like you said, especially classically with women, we're always just, oh, you just got to lose weight. And you're like, I've done all the right things. I'm right. Eating, like you said, I'm eating clean, really low sulfates, and yet it's nothing's improved. As you said, it got even worse. So that is just, oh my goodness. I'm sorry you went through all of that. I mean, again, I'm happy that you didn't have a brain tumor. Of course, I'm happy that you're feeling so much better. But this is part of the reason I wanted you on the show, because it just fascinates me what the human body is capable of and how much we still don't know. And the fact that, again, something like that you've been experiencing for over a decade. And it's simply, and again, and I don't mean to make light of it, but it's completely different from anything that you had anticipated hearing, being told, being diagnosed. So I'm glad, but again, you have to be a willing participant as well. So I'm really glad that you stuck with it and you said, no, I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to get right, because, some people unfortunately do kind of just live with this stuff and just say, oh, well, I guess this is my life now. And almost kind of use it as a crutch, as an excuse. But you were like, no, I have a family I want to be there for. I want to feel good. I want to be able to get out of bed and continue to live my life. So I really applaud you for just sticking to your guns and going after it. Cause that's the hardest part, is actually doing the work once you know.
Yeah. I don't think I realized what that meant. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD.
Okay.
And coming from, my dad and my stepdad were both in the military. And that's the first thing people think of when they hear PTSD, is that, you've been in the military or you've endured something, and they don't. And I guess I didn't realize, which is, it's wild, because I'm such a proponent of mental health and being aware, that I didn't know that things, like childhood trauma and, anything that you can go through creates trauma.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what other people think of the quote unquote severity of it. So once I got diagnosed with that, I was like, okay, like, what does that mean?
Right.
Why do I have that? And it's interesting. You uncover a lot of things. Your brain does a phenomenal job of protecting you from things maybe you don't remember, or you don't want to remember, or, anything like that. So, it's been a journey for sure. I really I feel like women in general have an obligation to themselves to kind of go on that healing journey, no matter what their past looks like, no matter what they look like, in terms of their family makeup or anything. Just go to therapy. Everybody should go to therapy.
I'm at a point where I feel like it should be like mandatory. Like if you get health insurance from your employer, that should be a stipulation. Like you need, but still, unfortunately, particularly in this country, well, and I think in a lot of countries worldwide, there's still a stigma. I mean, even myself, totally. I've talked about how I go to therapy. I was there this morning. But I always say, like, it took me a while. Like, I've always wanted to go, because I'm one of those people, I have to talk stuff out. So, but at the same time, I'm like, but I don't have any, you know what I mean? Like, I haven't experienced X, Y, and Z. Like, it almost feels like, well, I haven't like paid my dues in order to, right. So I think that's a big part of it, where people are just like, well, I'm not having a mental breakdown in the middle of my day. So why do I need to go see this person? But it's like, you go to the doctor for a cold, you go to the doctor because your foot is sore, like go to a therapist and just, get your brain right. Well, and
It's
again,
like going to a doctor for your wellness exam. You know, you go
right.
once a year for a wellness exam, but maybe you don't know that something's wrong
Right.
until you go.
Right.
You know?
Well, and plus, and then there's so many other people that, well, I don't want to know. Like, okay, but like, so
However,
yeah, that's great for you, I guess. But what about the people around you? And, you know, it's,
right.
Well, and again, something like that, PTSD, like you said, we just associate it with the military. And, you know, somebody tells you that and you're like, but I haven't been to war. I haven't been in the middle of combat.
Right.
I haven't seen people die in front of me, you know.
Right.
But no, it takes all forms, all levels, and it can come from anywhere and it can come out of nowhere. So, you know, I appreciate you coming on and talking about it. And like I said, I'm a huge proponent myself. Lord knows I've got plenty of friends and family members that I'm like, maybe you should talk to someone. Like,
do I have a name for you?
Yeah,
yep.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You need a number?
Right.
I got you.
Exactly. So again, I'm glad that you're feeling better, that you're tackling it.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? Just continued therapy do you have any more things that you need to do as far as like just on the medical side that, you know, no, everything's pretty good now?
I mean, I talk to my therapist every other week now, which is, I feel like I graduated. It feels great.
Yeah.
You know, we had a rough couple years there, but yeah, I still, you know, I touch base with her. You know, I have her number if I need to talk about anything, if I'm not understanding something. But just because we live with our brains 24/7 doesn't mean we necessarily understand them. So there are sometimes it takes a lot of courage to sometimes admit that, okay, maybe I'm the problem in this situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, maybe, you know, if we're having the same argument with a spouse, you know, over and over again, or a friend or a family member or something, like, what's the common factor?
Yeah.
Let's dive into that, you know, like, let's kind of figure out, maybe it isn't you, maybe it's a situation, but it doesn't hurt to look at it.
Or maybe you just need to approach it differently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, again, that's a big problem with our society too, is that we're so about instant gratification. And, you know, we think, oh, okay, well, I talked to this person. Sure. Yeah, that's great. We got this diagnosis. They figured out I had this past trauma and this is what's happening. Okay. Like, I'm good. Like, why do I have to, I shouldn't have to keep going. Like, it's, you know, but for you, I would imagine it opened up a lot of things you didn't want to open up. The floodgates just came, and you all of a sudden now you're just hit with it, and you just have to deal with it and sit with it and live with it and live through it. So how long after you started, you know, once you kind of had that realization that, oh, there's this underlying trauma here that I haven't dealt with yet, how long into that process did you start to feel better? Did you start that maybe you had that weight off your shoulder, that the pain had started to kind of dissipate?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd say probably within the last year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, you know, to be transparent, I don't know necessarily that I would have approached it this way.
Sure.
Had I not had a series of really traumatic things happen, like, in succession. I'm very, you know, you know, silver lining, I guess, to everything. Like, I'm grateful for those experiences kind of pushing me in that direction, but it definitely made me realize that there's a whole lot of ugly I need to uncover.
Sure.
And I have this saying, and I'm sure other people have said it before, but like, things that stay in the dark eventually come to light.
Absolutely.
And you can't heal until those things are exposed to the light. So that's kind of how I was like, you know what, just let's take it all.
Yeah.
Take it all out.
Well,
let's talk about it.
Well, and again, it takes a lot of strength and resilience, and maybe just getting to a point of saying, fuck it, I can't live like this anymore. You know, some people have to hit rock bottom. I mean, Lord knows I have a family member and a couple of friends who are like, I don't want to go to therapy because I don't want to go through that again. I don't want to bring it all up, but it's like, but that's the only way you can move forward, because you have to get past it. You have to go through it. So again, that's I'm a big advocate for it. That's why I wanted to bring it up. I'm glad you're doing it. I mean, but even like you said, you know, with your spouse, the divorce rate's out of control here in this country. And I think people are getting married for different reasons and starting families for different reasons. But, Tammy, who's been on the show, has, she's been married 30 years now. And she told me at one point, she goes, yeah, things were really bad with my marriage. I read a book that was basically like, it's you, bitch. Like
Yep.
not that she was
Yep.
purposely, creating a dramatic environment or anything extreme like that. But it was one of those, like, you need to approach it differently in order to get it. You have to, in order to change how the result, you have to change how you approach the situation. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So she realized, oh, my husband doesn't think the way that I think. He doesn't respond to things the way that I respond to. He doesn't care about things the way that I care about them. So I have to change how I talk to him. I have to change how we have discussions. I have to change how I ask for things or how I request support and make him rather than just freak out because can't read my mind and he's not doing it my way. So she said when I started doing that and when I changed not only how she reacted, but just like I said, just how she asked a question really made all the difference in the world and also brought her a better understanding of who he was, who the person that she married was. But a lot of people don't want to do that anymore. People don't want to put in the work. I've had friends that I've said that to them. I've said, hey, maybe it's your approach. I can't be bothered. Like, well, okay, then be miserable with your spouse. Like, I don't,
right.
Why would you want to continue to live that way if there is an alternative? But some people, I don't know, just need drama, need to like to suffer. I don't know.
I mean, I can wholeheartedly say that not having that drama is 10 times better because
you would think, right?
I mean, and it sounds so simple to say, but when you're used to that environment, like, okay, this is my normal, this is my baseline.
It's the devil, for sure.
Oh yeah, totally.
For sure.
I mean, my husband and I have been married for 13 years this year. Don't tell him I'm doing math. 13 years this year. But we've been together for longer, probably 15 or 16 years at this point.
Yeah.
And things were not always peachy keen. We had a lot, he jumped into a relationship with me with a very young child, that I had from a previous relationship. And it wasn't always easy. We were poor for a good chunk of our marriage and we hustled a lot and we struggled. And, there was a time we separated for a year, we still kept in contact and, whatever, but we were heading towards that path of divorce because it was easier than actually talking about the problem.
Right. Yeah.
And the problem was we were two individuals not being a partnership. We were, on paper, yes, we were doing everything we were supposed to be doing, but we weren't actually, I had a really hard time trusting him.
Sure.
And that stemmed from things I now dealt with in therapy many years later. Like, okay, I don't know how to trust. I don't know how to put I'm very hyper independent because that's how I grew up. So it's like, once you kind of tackle those things, like we've never been happier. And it's funny because people will meet us now and they're like, oh, like, did you guys just get married? We're like, no, not at all. Like, but it almost took everything kind of breaking to put it back together. But it really, and I'm so stubborn. I am my father's daughter. Like, I'm not the problem. No, I definitely was part of the problem.
Yeah.
And once you kind of accept that and you're like, okay, that's fine. Everybody is though.
Yeah.
None of us are perfect. And I also think our country romanticizes marriage to a point where if it's not rainbows, butterflies, everything from the get-go and always, then okay, I don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah. The white picket fence and the 2.5 kids. Yeah.
Right. And that's not how it works. Like not every marriage looks the same. Not every relationship looks the same, but I don't know. I think people give up too easily. I do.
No, I completely agree. They do. Yeah. Because again, it's easier to give up than to actually deal with it, to actually do the work and take that time. Yeah. And I think just everything nowadays is so, no matter what it is, everything is just so overwhelming. To the point where, okay, well, if that's just one more thing I can give up and I can take it off my plate, everything will be so much easier. And it's like, actually, probably not. If anything, it's going to be worse for you. But we kind of, again, through social media making us less social, we have completely forgotten how to support one another, how to look out for one another, how to recognize when somebody is drowning. And I think also we get overwhelmed with the prospect of like, I don't know how to help them. So we feel that like giving somebody their space or, let me just back off and they'll come to me, which like you wouldn't go to them. Why do you think they would come to you? Right. So I think we all just have to recognize that everybody is going through something, and it's so easy. I know it's so easy to say, and we put it on socials all the time. Oh, somebody's always going through something you don't know about. Well, yeah, that's it, but it's absolutely true. But unfortunately, it's also kind of become a cliche. So you're just like, yeah, I know. Okay, I get it. Like, so I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I think hopefully people start to recognize that more, that it's okay to reach out. It's okay to lean on others. It's okay to take that time for yourself. And, again, be it, physically, health-wise, be it mentally, emotionally, it's okay to take that step back and say, okay, I have to work through this in order to just survive, to function, to, again, just a simple matter of like, at the very least, I want to be able to get out of bed each morning. Yeah. And I unfortunately, there's too many people out there that are just not taking care of themselves in that way. And it's a shame. But like I said, that's part of the reason I have these conversations. Hopefully, someone hears it and thinks, okay, fuck, I got to do the work. But you got to do the work. Yeah. You have to.
I mean, I think on the topic of social media too, it's important to recognize that 99% of the things that you see online are bullshit.
God, Lord knows. Yep.
Like the things that people put about their lives constantly, like I was having this conversation. I was at a softball game the other day for my daughter, and, me and some of the parents who, we've been watching our girls play for years together. We're all sitting down and we're talking about the same thing. Like, we know you in real life, right? Like, we've had conversations with you and whatever. Yeah. We know everything that you're putting on Facebook is not true. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like, you're aware of that, aren't you? And sometimes it's frustrating because some people don't know that. Some people don't talk to people on a regular basis. So they see these snapshots of these people like, oh, I'm in Prague and I'm on the, like, great. That's awesome. And that's amazing if that's your life. Sure. Yeah. But it's not necessarily real. Right. You don't see the fact that, this woman's posting about, her beautiful life and her kids and on trips, but in the background, her husband's abusing her or yelling at her or getting drunk or doing something. Yeah. We don't talk about those parts because we hide those parts. Yeah. We only talk about the good.
Well, and it's always interesting to me too, because I have a couple of, mutual friends who are, they're friends on Facebook and stuff. And one friend doesn't post anything. She had gone through some workplace trauma herself, and now to protect herself, she really doesn't share anything on socials, which completely understandable. Yet I have another friend who's very much like you, very open, very honest when she's got good days and bad, kind of shares it all, talks through things. A lot of it comes from a place of, because this is where I'm here now, and I'm really proud of the work I've done to get here. But my other friend sees that and is like, why do they don't need to tell us everything. Why do they need to stop? They shouldn't be sharing. People don't need to know X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay, but again, you went through something. So you're coming from one experience, you're coming from one perspective. She also went through some things. She took it a completely different route and is taking it as like a learning experience, as a growth experience. Again, self-esteem building for herself to say, I'm so proud of where I've come. You chose not to take that approach, not to come at it that way. So it's one of those you're damned if you do kind of situations. Yep. And totally. And I think that's, again, as a society, social media has just made us all judgy, has made us all, so like you said, like, even if you're a person who's posting everything and being real and being honest, warts and all, you're still going to get bullshit from people that are like, I don't understand why we don't need to hear about that. You don't need to be putting that out there. Like, well, fuck. Like, okay, so do you want me to be phony as shit?
Right.
You know, or do you want me to act like a real human being with going through real human being shit? Like,
right.
Like it's just, you know, so.
I mean, like years ago, I had a blog, like years ago, like 10, 12 years ago.
Yep, I remember.
Because I worked like 60 hours a week. I talked to stupid people all day long and I found it hilarious. Yeah. So my brain is very, like, I love comedy. I'm very much like a comedy person. I find things funny.
Yeah,
I
me
find
too.
Inappropriate things funny. Like, so I'm writing all these things down and like making punchlines and stuff because it brought me joy and I got laughs out of it. And my husband thought it was funny and like my actual friends thought it was funny. But then I would get like the random people who didn't know me very well. God, you're so negative. I'm like, no, I'm actually hilarious. There's a complete difference. It's not the same thing.
Right.
But that's because that's your mindset.
Yeah.
You're bringing it to a negative space because that's where you are. I've learned to laugh at negative things. Yeah. There's a difference between us. So when I see people who are like, oh God, like, why do we have to like hear, like, I'll also get kind of confused when I see the same picture of the same girl's abs every single day in a row. But you know what? Good on her, girl. You look great.
Right.
You know what? Life is too damn short. Like good for you.
Yeah. I've started I have started looking at things that way. Cause again, we're only human and
right.
My aesthetic is different from your aesthetic. So if I see somebody dressed a certain way, you know, you of course you're initially going to go right to that. You're going to go to that judgy place. Yep. But then I stop myself and I say, but you know what? If that makes that person happy, they chose to dress that way and walk out of the house that way. More power to them. Just because that's not something that I would. Yeah, exactly. God bless. The best, you know, I literally, and not to blow up this person's spot, but I left therapy this morning and there was somebody in the waiting room kind of dressed as a furry. Like looked like they were trying to take on the persona of a cat, had cat ears, had, you know, fur around their cuffs and dressed in a very interesting way and sitting in a kind of interesting way. And I walked by, I said, okay, that's a choice. But I said, but you know what? Good for them. And hell, they're here in therapy. So they're working on themselves. This is what makes them happy. This is how they want to leave the house. This is the person that they want to be today. Good for them. Great for them. Because again, what's the alternative? Not wanting to get out of bed. And I'd rather this person be amongst us living their life than being stuck at home feeling, you know, just defeated, just, you know. So I think if people start to kind of change their brains that way, you know, like this person wasn't out here being an asshole. This person wasn't out here, you know,
just living their life.
Right. Now, if I see that person walking around and, you know, littering in the street or something, then I'm going to have an issue. Yeah. But if you're just walking around with cat ears and a little fur on around your wrists, enjoy your life. Good for you. I hope you have a great day.
I didn't grow up here. So a girl that I grew up with in New Hampshire, she's gone through a lot of stuff. And she recently, in like the last year or so, had just some like legal issues surrounding her substance abuse. And she has been very open about her journey. And, you know, she's like, I'm 90 days sober and I'm feeling regret and I'm feeling regret for these things that I've experienced and stuff. But it's like, it's so much better to get it out than keep it in, girl.
Absolutely.
Like 90 days is huge. Like, good for you. I know. And then I look at that and people get upset, but it's like, I know people who are struggling in silence. I know people who, you know, and I've talked about it openly. Like, I say that I lost my best friend to drugs, but she's still alive. I haven't seen her in 17 years now.
Yeah.
I think about her all the time.
That's heavy.
You know, I don't know where she is.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you, but she could hear something like that, or she could see something like that maybe and say, maybe that's like the push that's like, okay, maybe I need to go to the hospital. Maybe I need to go to a doctor. Maybe I need to do something.
Right. Or reach out to that person and say, hey, how did you do it? Who can I call? Who can I reach out to? Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Because you have two choices. You either get sober or you die.
Yeah.
Those are the only two options. You get sober or you die.
Yeah.
So if this person is choosing to talk about their journey to getting sober, they've lost everything. What else do they have to lose?
Right.
Help drag people up with you. Yeah. You know, like So,
well, and it's
share
wild.
it
It's wild who comes through the woodwork when you do start to open up and you do start to share. You know, I've talked about it on the show. You know, when I had my bariatric surgery, all of a sudden I have people coming, oh yeah, I went through it and for this reason, that reason, my next door neighbor went through it. And I'm like, why aren't we fucking talking about this? Like, why is it like, you know, they're messaging me in private and that kind of thing. You know, I spent the weekend with my cousins and my cousin's wife had it. So we were talking about different things and my cousin herself is going to be getting it. So we were talking about it and just, you know, like, oh, I'm experiencing, oh yeah, I went through that. Like, put it out there. Join the community, have some people that you can bounce shit off of. It's like, but we make everything so trivialized and it's so taboo and it's so, you know, oh, you can't talk about it. Like, what the fuck? Why not? Why not?
Well, but then you have the people on the other hand who have the surgery and then they have the cosmetic surgery and don't say anything.
Right.
And then they start trying to sell themselves as, oh, I'm a fitness person. I can make you lose weight by doing this. And I'm like, and I know somebody, I went to school with somebody who did that.
Yeah.
Had, you know, breast augmentation, skin removal surgery, all that. Like, good for you.
Right.
Amazing. Like, I like when I lost a lot of weight too. And I have loose skin and stuff still, but it's like, be honest about it. You're trying to sell like, yes, great. You went back to school and you became a fitness instructor and you became like a nutritionist or a dietitian or whatever she did. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But you're selling a fake story. Like, be proud of the tool that you use because it got you to the success that you have.
And that's just it too, you know, because you can spin that a different way. You can say, yes, I did all of this work, but this is what I'm doing now to make sure I don't go back, to make sure I don't end up in that place again. I'm maintaining, I'm trying to better myself. And these are the things I needed to do as a jumping off point for that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, I say that all the time. Like, yes, I've had some ongoing health things that have kind of, you know, put me on the backtrack, but I still have a goal I'm trying to reach. I still have a place I want to get to. At some point, yes, surgery will be a part of that journey because I don't want the flappy arms. I don't want the saggy skin in certain areas, but I'm not gonna shy away from it and lie about it because it's a fucking part of life. And
it is,
you know, we change our hair color, we get waxed, we get spray tans, we get veneers, whatever the shit. So it's just another part of that. This is what I need to feel better about myself. This is what I need to, you know, so just, I completely agree. Like, the more people that are honest about it, the easier it is for us to talk about it as a community and to just, again, just at the very least, bounce ideas off one another and say, hey, this is what, you know, can you recommend, what doctor did you see? Who did you talk to? What, you know, I just met a woman who she's been having this ongoing issue with an ankle. She's going to need like a total ankle joint replacement. And at the time when she had an injury, got the injury, they weren't able to do what they can do now. So now she's going there. I guess they're like 3D printing a bone or something, which they hadn't done before. So now that's going to be but like, again, the more people know about these things that are available to them every time a new treatment comes up or technology or something, don't keep it to yourself. like let other people know what's going on here.
And there are people who are private about things, and that's totally within their right. If you don't want to share it, totally fine. But I think it's dishonest if you're trying to sell something and you're not being honest, like, or you're trying to paint. But again, it's a lot of it's social media. Yeah. Like, we're seeing snapshots and we're seeing what people want to sell us.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I'm just like, yo, hey, I'm a hot mess.
I was literally just listening to a radio show the other day, and they were talking about that, how in school, a teacher took a semester off and all of a sudden she came back and her boobs were perkier and higher and her hair was a different color. And she, all of a sudden was wearing tighter clothes and had lost. Oh, it was just, I just needed that vacation. Oh, it was just, that's what I needed. I just needed to relax and to like, that's how she was spinning. And everybody's like, no, girlfriend, like, absolutely. Like, you don't go from an A cup to a D cup by taking a couple months in the sun. Like, that's not
like, what vitamins are those? Right.
That's just not how it's working. Yeah. And that's the funniest part about it to me, because we're like, bitch, we know that's not what you did to get there. We know. Yeah. So why? But again, that's an insecurity thing. That comes from, for some reason, you did all of that work, but yet you're embarrassed about it. So
Right.
again, maybe you need to go to therapy and talk it out, because
it also comes back.
That clearly didn't make things right, because now you're ashamed to talk about it. So what are you doing? How are you helping yourself there?
I really think that shame is one of the biggest disservices we do to ourselves as humans and as a culture, because we think because we don't fit into a certain mold, or we didn't do certain things within like a specific timeline, like, oh, it's too late for me. Oh, I'm too old. Oh, I can't do this. And it's like, no, I mean, I'm a perfect example of that too, but it's just, I just wish people gave themselves a little bit more grace, because not everybody's story is the same, you know?
And it's interesting to me. I feel like our generation was the last, quote unquote, American dream generation, which again was you're supposed to do things in order. You're supposed to go to college. Then you're supposed to find your soulmate and land your dream career, have the white picket fence, the 2.5 kids, the house in suburbia, take these vacations. We were all sold that this was the goal. This was the end game. Mm-hmm. This was how it was supposed to look for all of us. But things have changed so dramatically. Just in the past 20 years alone, the nuclear family looks different. Everybody looks different, approaches life differently, does things differently. Why are we still putting that pressure on ourselves that this is how we should live our lives, when nobody's living their life that way anymore? No one at all.
They're not.
So but it's embedded in us. It's like, it's almost like a collective trauma. Like it's a shared trauma that this was beaten into us. This is what we were told. This was how life was supposed to go. These were the steps you were supposed to take. And if you didn't take them, and if you didn't hit these milestones at a certain age, you were wrong. You failed somewhere. You're less than. And it's wild to me, because you look around and you're like, none of us are living that life. None of us are living that way. Nope. Yeah. But yet for some reason, that's still how it's supposed to be.
It's great. Like I didn't finish school until I was 37.
Yeah.
And when I graduated, I looked around and everybody was like in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
Right.
There were so many different ages. And I'm like, this is awesome, because, you hear about, and I have some friends who were like very, very gifted, and they graduated college very young and had these amazing, successful careers, and they're incredible human beings. And that's amazing. That's not true for everybody. And I think, and now as, some of us become parents and stuff, we have to kind of internalize that and make sure we're not projecting that onto our kids, because like my daughter's going to be a senior next year, and it's like, oh my God, she didn't get straight A's last year. Oh my God, the world is going to fall apart. And I'm like, yeah, but it's really not though, because I didn't get straight A's either, and I'm doing just fine.
Right.
It's, it's like, it's okay. It doesn't make you any better or worse. It doesn't make you, I think we put much pressure on ourselves, but we also put pressure on each other.
Yeah.
In the form of judgment.
Yeah. Well,
because
again, we've been told that that's what defines us.
Right.
Our title, our bank account, our status, our family, our home life. Yeah. Which again is why now everybody on social is being fake as fuck, because this is what society says I'm supposed to do and how I'm supposed to look. Yeah.
My daughter doesn't even know what I do for work. She filled out a thing for Mother's Day, and it says, what is my mom's job? She's like, I can't explain it. I just know it's important. That's all it said.
I mean, that's good though. It's
that's cute. Yeah. Like, great. Yeah. It's important because, I pay your bills. It's about it. Right. But who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like who actually I was thinking about this the other day, because we do, I know, like growing up, when we grew up, it was like you went to school, you were a doctor, you were a lawyer. Some of us, wanted to be astronauts, whatever. If you weren't in this very niche area, what were you even doing with your life?
Yeah.
You know? And then you go to, I went to my 20-year high school reunion, and it's like everybody does very random and different things. And you know what the common thing was? I didn't know what any of them did, but everybody seemed happy. So what do I care? Right. Who cares?
Right. Well, because if it's not of interest to you, you don't need to worry about it or understand it.
I don't pay their bills. What the hell do I care how they make their money?
Right.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's a weird thing. So you're right though. We are that last generation that was just like, okay, we need to do everything exactly on this timeline.
Right.
And we cannot bring shame to the family, like,
well, and it's funny now because we also, because again, because of how the world has gone and things have progressed and changed. And now we're like, oh, you don't want to go to college? Well, that's fine. You couldn't afford it anyway. You know what I mean? Like now all of a sudden it's complete. Like if it was attainable, if it was affordable, I think we would still push for that. We would still say that you have no reason to not want to further your education and not want to get a degree. But now we all have this collective understanding that like, oh yeah, it's way too expensive. Like I don't blame you for not going or for wanting to go to a trade school or for wanting to immediately just go into a career and hope for the best. But so it's very interesting how circumstances also help shape and change our way of thinking. So it's, who knows what the next 20 years is going to look like, frankly. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, our generation, we were just like, okay, we need to get into a really good school and, aim for the Ivy Leagues. And now, I'm getting ready to have these conversations with my daughter. I'm like, how about community college to start? Because she doesn't, she's not really sure what she wants to do yet.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's like, why waste? So we did one college tour and it was $65,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you want to spend that much money to not know what you want to study?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a ripoff. So
I used to tell people that I used to give tours at my university, and my university at the time was $35,000 a year. And I would say that to people. I would say, if you don't know, you're spending a lot of money to figure it out. And is that worth your time? Is that worth your parents' hard-earned pay? Like, go to a community program or go to a 2-year program, a shortened program, get some experience, try some things, dip your foot in the pool a little bit. But if you don't know, don't just commit to a big, and Lord knows half the kids that I actually ended up graduating with in college came from other universities, came from other schools, and, had transferred after a couple of years, and, this wasn't right for me, or they didn't have the programs I needed after all. But sometimes it takes us a while to figure it all out.
Absolutely.
And that's okay. But putting yourself in debt to get to that point, that's just, we can't do that anymore. We just simply can't do it. So I mean,
especially if I look at people, like, because I graduated later, I just went with what I'd been doing. So my degrees match my trajectory, but the trajectory came first. But if I look back on my friends who did what they were supposed to do, quote unquote, and went to college after high school and did all those things, I don't know many of them that are actually working in the field they studied.
I'm certainly not. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You went for art, right? Did you do fine art?
I went for fine arts. I was hoping to be some type of administrator in a museum. Like, that was my goal. It'd be cool if I could be a curator, but I'm happy to do back of house shit. Like, I just wanted to be surrounded by art and support the arts. And just circumstances as they were, that just never happened. Some of my friends were able to, but in a field like that, you have to move into a big major city. Some of my friends were able to do that. And they're still in the arts, and that's great. That worked out for them. But I had a very different trajectory just based on circumstance. So, and again, not to say that I'm not happy now. I make a very good living. I have really good benefits. I travel and I do all the things that I want to do. But yeah, for a while, you kind of beat yourself up because this wasn't the plan. This wasn't the intention. And, you should feel bad about it. Well, no, you're still doing the things. Like, I mean, I get messages from my friends all the time, and they're like, holy shit, it's so great that you were able to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm living vicariously through you, and wow. And I think to myself, like, you could do it, but we all have, a different set of circumstances.
Yeah.
And who's to say that any of them are wrong? But I mean, aside from society, but
I mean, like, I look at, and I think our parents' generation was different too. So my stepdad worked literally until the day he died.
Yeah.
And he was getting ready to retire, but he didn't enjoy any part of his life.
Right.
before that.
Didn't go anywhere. Didn't see anything.
Didn't take time off.
Yeah.
He made enough money to do all of it. He just didn't do any of it.
Yeah.
And I look at that now, you know, I'm in my 30, like almost 40, but I'm still in my 30s. Just give me grace. And I think about like, oh God, I've been working. When have I had any fun? So like the last couple of years, it's just like, wow,
You've
life
been
is
living
so
it
short.
up, girl. You have been.
Let me tell you.
Love it.
Yeah, but it isn't. Yeah. I mean, yeah, but life's too short.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I could walk out and a tree could fall on me tomorrow. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
You know, like the way I look at it is if your basic needs are being taken care of and you've planned and you know it and you know kind of where you're at, enjoy your life.
Well, I mean, I literally just read an article the other day. I follow a lot of different I'm really fascinated with like setting up the future and like getting things prepared. And I kind of hammer this home with my mom all the time. I'm like, you need to develop a trust, or you need to make sure your will is like, those kinds of things. So I read an article about an elderly gentleman. I want to say he was like 89 years old, something like that. But the article was titled, I didn't plan for retirement, but I have $1.8 million now. Like, it's not that hard. Like you'll be fine, kind of thing. But he's talking about the fact that he and his wife never traveled, never left the country, live frugally. We don't want for much, I've been wearing the same clothes for years, that's great. But I'm thinking to myself, the fuck kind of life is that? Like, so you have no experiences. You've never left the house. You've not created these memories. You just worked, and then you just kind of sat on your Social Security. And if you're happy, that's great. But that's just not normal, quote unquote. That's not anybody else's everyday experience. So I read articles like this and I'm like, this isn't helpful. This isn't.
No.
You're trying to tell people, oh well, don't worry if you've got a dead end job. Don't worry if you don't have a 401k. Don't worry if you don't have a pension plan. No, you should be worried.
You should be worried. Yeah,
because this guy didn't leave his house. That's not going to work for 99% of us. And he said something too about. But he also said something too about like, I think he had 3 children and he said, we never provided for their schooling. They were able to take care of it themselves. They went on to have good jobs. And I'm like, again, that's very atypical. That's not the norm. That's not a scenario a lot of people find. That like, no wonder you were able to amass $1.8 million. You're not doing fuck all.
Like, what? Yeah. No. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, you got to stay away from, especially like Reddit too. Like Reddit's worse than Facebook sometimes because they're like, you're not 35 and have $3 million in your retirement. What are you even doing?
Right.
So it's like, there's a very happy medium. People can find it. I promise. Well, it's out there.
Yeah. Well, again, my cousin who has a business and I'm going to be going out to France to visit him in a month or so. We were talking about, because I'm on a YouTube show now and then this show. And we were talking about metrics and things like that. And I always say, we joke about the things like OnlyFans and that kind of shit. But I said, people don't understand. And even talking with our realtor friend, Tammy, the other day, I said, people don't understand how much work goes into social media and how much work goes into promoting yourself. So, I was talking with producer Mike about it. And I was like, it's as a joke, like, oh yeah, how do you get on OnlyFans? And then another friend was like, oh, well, you have to create like a fake Instagram account that then links people and directs people to your OnlyFans. And you have to put content on that. And I'm like, if it's more than 2 steps, it's too much for me. I don't have the fucking time. And I don't think, and again, people don't recognize that. Like we're talking about algorithms and there's so much you have to do. So when people are like, oh, just be an influencer, just throw your shit on OnlyFans. That's so much more work than anybody is actually interested in putting, those people that put that in and they make money off it. God bless them. That's great. It's also not sustainable. Everybody knows it's not sustainable. Like you're not going to be, like you said, like a body influencer, for example, a fitness influencer when you're 75. Like that's so at some point. And again, you have no 401k through that. You have no pension plan through that. You have no medical plan, health benefit plan through that. So at some point you're going to end up fucked beyond belief. And what do you do? Where do you go from there? So again, those people that are saying, oh, you should have X amount of dollars in the bank by the time you're 35. How about, it would be nice if I still had that by the time I'm 75. How are you maintaining that? How are you growing that? And that's what we're not educating ourselves about. Again, so we're in the social media generation, the YouTube, the Instagram generation, the TikTok generation, where people think, I just need one thing to go viral and I'm set for life. It's like, babe, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But we're not educating anybody that way. We're not. I mean, I'm glad our friend Kelly has the podcast about, about mortgages and about, planning for the future and about, legality and all of that stuff. But unfortunately, that's not going to become a popular podcast because it's not flashy and it's, you can't make a reel out of it. And so it's, the information's out there, but that's not what people want to consume. So
yeah, and I think we don't take into consideration too. I mean, if you look at statistics, especially in our country, ages, they say a good portion of us don't even have a month of expenses in our savings. Yeah, and that's true for so many Americans.
Absolutely true.
And a lot of us are also products of divorce. A lot of us are also products of maybe not coming from generational wealth or having financial literacy.
Yeah.
So things that I know now about, and how I got to where I got to was from reading a lot and making a lot of mistakes and stumbling. Absolutely. And, having bad credit in my 20s and doing all of these things that I'm like, oh crap, I can't do any of this.
Yeah.
And so, and like, you're a homeowner, you're a millennial homeowner. Oh my God, it actually happens.
You're right. But again, that didn't happen until I was in my 30s.
Right.
I didn't move out of my mom's house until I was 30. Yeah.
It's not impossible though.
Yeah. Right.
And we painted this picture like, oh, you can never do it. It's like, no, you can't buy a $750,000 house making $15 an hour like you want to.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to suck it up and maybe, but I bought a small house. My first house is tiny.
Yeah.
But it's increased in value and I'm building equity. Exactly. And it's like, it's all a financial investment. You just have to have to know how to play the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was just talking with my mom about this because we have a family friend who is extremely wealthy, has money that we'll never get to. And
do they want to adopt anybody?
Yeah. Right. But they make comments like that because they don't live in the real world. They had said something about, like my old house, I really would have liked to keep, and I really would have liked to keep my old house, but my roommate had got engaged. They didn't want to keep it. I couldn't afford it on my own. And he, just talking what ifs and, well, what if you were able to have kept that house? And I said, well, no, it was just too much for me. It was just me by myself. There was a very big yard. There's a pool, it was 3 floors. It's a lot for one person. But he was like, yeah, but if you had it paid off, like you could have paid someone to do the yard. You could have paid someone to come to the pool. And I'm like, I can't live a life where I pay things off just to now have another bill. Like that's not how that's great that you can live that way. Like it's just writing another check. That's wonderful. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then talking about like emergency funds and things like that. And again, same thing. They said, you work so hard at this job and your schedule's really difficult and you're running around. And they were like, that's great that, I'm sure you've got an emergency fund built up. But I looked at them and I said, but you don't know what an emergency, quote unquote, will cost you. Like I have an emergency fund until I need it. Until that emergency hits, then I might be fucked.
Exactly.
You can't put a price on a what if because, a tree could fall on my house. My house could catch on fire. A meteor could land and destroy the entire town. Like there's, or my job is gone tomorrow. Like there's people that have that kind of money just don't live in reality anymore. No. And it's really, really hard. And again, and we're seeing this now with the politicians, with all of these billionaires that are just like, what's the problem? Like, again, our president making that off the cuff comment about like, oh, well, instead of having $30, maybe you have $5. The dolls aren't the problem, kiddo. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're like live in reality. So it's hard. It's hard. And again, we're all going through it. We're all experiencing things in our own way. But as I said, this is why I appreciate having the conversation with you and bringing you on here, because I think the more that we share, the more that we can realize how similar all of us still are. You know, our paychecks may be different, our circumstance may be different, but we're all going through it.
Amen.
And again, we have so much more that we can talk about, but I'm going to end it here. And again, Sarah, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for sharing, you know, some of your story. And I know there's a lot more to go through, and we'll get there at some point. I'll definitely have you back, but I'm glad that you got some answers through your persistence, through saying, I'm not going to live like this. I refuse to live like this. I refuse to accept that this is just how things are. And I think the more of us that do that, the better we will be for it. So again, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me. And gang, this was Try Not to Curse. We'll catch you next time.